My name is Rania Hassan. I'm a policy analyst in the governor's office. I graduated from NC State with a bachelor's of science in environmental science and a concentration in environmental policy and justice. I did. When I was in college, I had an internship at an organization called Don't Waste Durham. They're an organization that focuses on reducing plastic pollution in the city of Durham. When I was there, I did a lot of research because they were just about to launch this Green to Go program that's now officially launched and has really kind of taken off in Durham, which is really cool. But it's basically a program where folks would, like restaurants would like sign up to participate in getting these like reusable plastic containers, and so people could sign up to be a part of the program, and instead of taking like a styrofoam or like disposable container, they take this one, and then after they were done with it, they'd return them in these like stations, and they would be washed and redistributed to restaurants. So they had a very big focus on just like reducing plastic pollution in Durham, and it was a really cool internship. Definitely. I think that I started to realize that plastic pollution was actually like a big passion of mine in environmental science. I do think that these opportunities are important because I think it helps you hone in on what you actually want to do in your career. You kind of enter college and you're just kind of trying to figure things out, and I think this helps I think it helps people figure out what they actually want to do, and like even within kind of like a job specific things, like do you like to do research? Do you like to be more hands-on? Do you like to interact with people a lot? Like I think those kind of like on-site and in-person experiences like really help you figure out what you want to do. The Office of the Governor, obviously, they do a lot of things, just like policy and legal stuff and stuff that have to do with the state in general. I work on the policy team and the climate team. Policy team are folks who specialize in different policy areas, and we come up with policy solutions for these different policy areas in the state. So we have folks who focus on education, healthcare, voting, climate, public safety, and all of their jobs is to kind of figure out how to advance the governor's policies in the state of North Carolina. In my current position, I've actually worked on policy team as both a policy assistant and now as a policy analyst. When I was a policy assistant, I did a lot of office administrative work that included just basic scheduling and just office administrative stuff for the policy director and the policy advisors. Did a lot of research into different potential policy areas, helped write policy briefs. Now more in my role as a policy analyst, I work very closely with both policy team and climate team, but more so the climate team on environmental justice policy. Environmental justice is, understanding that there are some communities that are more hurt by the environmental impacts of climate change or just environmental degradation in general, and so trying to figure out how to best help those communities navigate and mitigate those extra risks. And so I work a lot with the Environmental Justice Advisory Council, staffing that, and just helping them advance the governor's priorities on EO 292. An executive order is an action that the governor can take to advance policy in North Carolina it's not technically law, but it's a policy in the state. Executive Order 292 is an executive order advancing environmental justice in North Carolina, and it had very specific asks. There used to be an Environmental Justice Advisory Council in the Department of Environmental Quality. It elevated it to the governor's office, so it established the Governor's Environmental Justice Advisory Council. That council is tasked with coming up with a report on recommendations on how to best solve environmental justice issues. They are tasked with understanding cumulative impacts of environmental justice in the state. I think I had a kind of interesting path, I think, to this job because my previous jobs were kind of related, but not too much related. My first job was a job in horticulture science. In college, and I kept that job after I graduated. They were nice enough to keep me on. And, I kept that job and I was job searching at the same time. I knew that I wanted something in policy, but coming from an environmental science background and just an environmental policy minor, I think it was a little bit more difficult. And then the pandemic hit and, there wasn't a lot of hiring going on and that sort of thing. But I kept, just kind of like pursuing different jobs and that sort of thing. And I had a lot of policy experience from my college classes, and I think that's what really helps me. But also in general, I've just always been someone involved of politics just because of my background and where I come from. And I, in my job search, a friend of mine reached out to me who was working in the governor's office and let me know that she was going to be moving on to a different position, and thought of me for the role. And so I applied, I interviewed, and I got it. I think, honestly, the thing that prepared me the most for this role was my college policy classes. There's a lot of, writing and just research in this job. And I feel like those skills are skills I developed in my policy classes. I did a lot of very similar things in my policy classes. My capstone for my environmental science major was working with Chatham County, and trying to find solutions to reducing their carbon emissions in different sectors. And like each group in our class was like tasked with a different sector. We were tasked with transportation. And so even like just getting that hands-on experience of what it's like to work on local policy, I think was really helpful to me. And also just being able to write papers on policy and that sort of thing. And then I think also my experience at Don't Waste Durham, one of the things that I was tasked with was doing research on policy proposals on how we could implement, plastic reduction laws or plastic bans in the state of North Carolina, just especially with like the different dynamics at play. Like there's a lot of lobbying that's done against these kinds of legislations. So I feel like that definitely prepared me for this position. I did not always want to do what I'm doing now. So just because of, growing up as a, Muslim woman in America, politics was always relevant to my life, but that didn't necessarily mean that I enjoyed it. Just kind of like remembering all the family gatherings and everyone would start like screaming politics, and I just didn't like that. I just didn't like that. And so even though politics was always a part of my life, it wasn't necessarily something that I enjoyed or wanted to pursue doing. And I actually was really interested in engineering. I did this IBM camp when I was in 8th grade, and it really, sparked my interest in engineering. I did an engineering pathway, PLTW, at my high school, Riverside High School, and came into college with the intention of wanting to do engineering. When I applied to NC State, I applied with environmental engineering and then environmental science, and didn't get in with environmental engineering, got in with environmental science, and was trying to work my way to transferring to engineering. And just in the, taking my environmental science classes and then trying also to take the engineering classes to transfer, I was starting to realize that, I wasn't really enjoying the transferring process into engineering as much. And in my environmental science classes, I was learning about, all of the technologies that we have to mitigate climate change and that sort of thing, and realizing that there's a lot of solutions to climate change, but the main problem is that those solutions weren't being implemented. And that's where policy came in and started to kind of pivot of these issues that we're dealing with will only get better if the people in power and people who have can change policy are willing to do it. I'd say my future career goals, I have really enjoyed working in state government, and I think that that's something that I'd probably pursue for a while. I would like to keep honing in on focusing on environmental policy, and I think that the climate team has really helped me do that, but any opportunities to keep focusing on environmental justice and environmental policy in general would be really cool. I'd say my advice to younger folks on trying to figure out what they want to do is that you most likely won't be doing the same thing for your whole life. So it's okay if you don't have everything figured out. Think of what, you're passionate about, and you never know, those things might change in the future. But be open to stepping out of your comfort zone, be open to trying new things. And I think, because that's the stuff that really helps you figure out what you want to do.